I never imagined myself to be the kind of woman who discards something tangible in favor of something that doesn't exist. But here I am, sitting by myself in my apartment, looking through old photos, wondering how I could have ruined the best thing that had ever happened to me because of some dumb cosmic sign. The narrative of how I ruined my life because I was too self-centered to recognize what was there in front of me is told by me, Jade, a 27-year-old. This small coffee shop downtown is where it all began 3 years ago. My hair was in disarray, coffee was dripping down my top, and I was rushing late for work. And then there was Elliot, this towering glass of water with the most sincere smile I'd ever seen, offering me napkins and cracking a joke about how he always gets people out of coffee trouble. Something about him caused me to pause and scribble my number on one of those napkins, even though normally I would have rolled my eyes at a line like that. We had dinner at this modest Italian restaurant on our first date, which wasn't very memorable. However, I recall thinking that speaking with him was simple. At the age of 33, Elliot was well established in his profession, had home, and was clear about his life goals. I was still learning stuff and alternating between social media management positions in the interim. Perhaps that's why I fell for him so quickly. He was stable in every way that I wasn't. After 8 months, we moved in together, and 4 months later, to everyone's surprise, he proposed. The speed at which I replied yes even astonished me. For a while, everything seemed like a dream, and the wedding was small but ideal. Elliot loved me so much that he was considerate, attentive, and nearly obnoxious. But the thought that I was settling was always there in the back of my mind. From romance novels with the caption, "This is the kind of passion you deserve." She would also ask me whether I felt that lightning bolt when we kissed or if Elliot made my heart race. In actuality, I didn't. Instead of being adventurous and dangerous, he was safe and comfy. I began equating Elliot with every male lead in every motion picture. The more I observed these made-up romances, the more I persuaded myself that Elliot was merely a genuinely wonderful man I happened to marry and not my soulmate. I also kept up these strange, fictitious friendships with my ex-partners. Nothing tangible, but emotional in ways that, had Elliot known, would have destroyed him. In the meantime, if a female co-worker even texted him after work, I would stress, "Out." I wouldn't notice the contradiction and would yell, "Professional boundaries." Elliot was ecstatic when I told him I was expecting. He looked up the safest car seats right away and began discussing the idea of turning the spare room into a nursery. I nodded and grinned, but I was in a panic. I was truly committing to this life, to him, when I had a baby. What would happen? If my true love was still out there? Elliot was busy making plans for our future, but I was sliding inward. When Elliot was working late, I would go out with Kira and the ladies, saying I needed a final celebration before becoming a mother. I was hesitant when they handed me a joint for the first time. Kira responded, "You shouldn't," but then she burst out laughing. Despite my better judgment, I accepted the statement, but Melissa smoked through her whole pregnancy, and her kids. Fine. It became a pattern. Me going out with friends, Elliot working late, and me doing things that I knew could hurt our unborn child, but convincing myself they wouldn't matter if I did them once. The doctor performed an ultrasound during my 12-week visit, frowning slightly as he moved the wand over my abdomen. I initially saw the spots at that time. "It's probably nothing," the doctor told me, "but take it easy for a few days." I told Elliot nothing of my worries, but I nodded and left for home. I experienced my first cramp that night while he discussed baby names. It was intense and persistent. However, I disregarded it, just as I had disregarded every red flag in our relationship. It felt like someone was stabbing me from the inside when I woke up in the middle of the night. When I saw the blood, I almost passed out as I staggered to the restroom. After a quick glance at me, Elliot hurried inside and dialed 911. They verified what I already knew in the hospital. I was going to lose our baby. There, in the sterile examination room, Elliot broke down, his shoulders trembling with silent tears. I knew better than the doctor, who talked about these things happening and said there was nothing you could have done. I was aware of the marijuana, the beverages I'd snuck while no one was looking, and the way I'd disregarded the warnings. The following days passed quickly. Elliot took time off work to look after me, making sure I took the prescription drugs, and giving me tea. My shame was exacerbated by his generosity. That's when the thought first occurred to me. A way to get out of the guilt, to change the story so I wasn't the bad guy. I began to give Elliot clues that I was dealing with the loss on a spiritual level. I set Elliot down in our living room a week after I had returned home from the hospital. I said to him, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, hoping to heal him by looking into his eyes." He reached for my hand and said, "And I think the universe was sending us a message." "What do you mean?" he asked. I withdrew. I saw his face break, as the words struck him like physical blows. "This miscarriage, I think it was a sign that we're not meant to be together, that you're not my soulmate." I doubled down when he tried to reason with me, telling me that loss causes people to think irrationally and that I was still in shock. Our house turned into a quiet battleground in the days that followed. Elliot took up residence in the guest room. Even though I had hardened my heart against it, I could still hear him sobbing through the wall at night. I saw my doctor for a follow-up appointment 2 weeks after I made my announcement. She then struck the second blow. The miscarriage had left scars and difficulties. My prospects of there were very few chances of bringing another child to term. Elliot needed to know, so I should have told him. Rather, I went home and got into an argument with him, saying he didn't give me time to mourn. I began telling Kira the following day that I had heard older fathers had sperm that might have genetic problems that could result in miscarriage. Kira spread it like wildfire, even though it was an outright lie. Before long, our mutual acquaintances were judging and feeling sorry for Elliot. Everyone could read between the lines of my cryptic captions about recovering from trauma and toxic relationships on social media that night, which became more and more ambiguous yet pointed. When Elliot sat on the edge of our bed after another round of yelling, he said, "Jade, is there anything left here to save?" I glanced at him and felt a strong need to get away. "No," I replied. "I don't think there is." The next weekend, I left. As Kira assisted me with packing, she continuously gave me encouragement about my bravery and my right to discover my genuine happiness. As I was emptying my drawers, Elliot stood in our bedroom doorway, pleading with me to change my mind, to at least try counseling. Hardening my heart against his tears, I disregarded him. As I left, he whispered, "You'll regret this." Not in a menacing way, but rather as a somber forecast. I got into Kira's car after rolling my eyes. I spent 2 weeks crashing on Kira's couch, sharing self-portraits with captions about rediscovering myself and inspirational words about fresh starts. I would provide just enough details to portray Elliot as the bad guy when people inquired about what had transpired. At the grocery store, I ran into Melissa, his sister. Regarding the rumors I had been spreading, she approached me. She growled, "How dare you blame him for the miscarriage?" In the end, I got a studio apartment downtown and found my own home. He's devastated about losing the baby. And now you've turned everyone against him. I'd always wanted a hip place like that, but Elliot believed it was unfeasible. At first, the independence was intoxicating. I danced on tables at bars, went out whenever I wanted, and reunited with old pals Elliot had never liked. I developed a new passion with dating apps, but it all grew more and more meaningless as the weeks stretched into months. When I was sick, none of my dates thought to bring me soup, and none of them recalled how I drank my coffee. After I moved out, I got divorce papers 4 months later. The official wording stating that our marriage was irretrievably broken struck me more strongly than I had anticipated when I saw our names spelled so formally. That night, a little tipsy and feeling sorry for myself, I called Elliot. As though I hadn't been the one to go, I questioned, "Did you have to do this?" With a whisper, "It's been 4 months, Jade," he added. "You made your choice." I saw it on Facebook the following week. Elliot's relationship status had changed. His profile picture showed a new woman with a big, sincere smile and an arm around his waist. Morgan. She had a subtle beauty that was much different from the glitzy portrayal. I made a lot of effort to project. I quickly made a phony Facebook account to monitor him after blocking him. Social media revealed to me that Morgan was expecting Elliot's child 6 months after I had left our home. I hurried to the restroom to throw up because I felt physically sick. When the entire weight of what I had thrown away finally hit me, I sat on the floor of my restroom, sobbing uncontrollably. Like a physical force, reality slammed down on me. What had I done? I had everything: a future, a house, and a man who loved me, and I had ruined it all because of some childish dream about soulmates and cosmic signals. I was devastated by the dating scene that I had been so eager to return to. And now Elliot was having a child with a different woman. I developed an obsession with learning about their shared existence. I would casually inquire about them from mutual friends, attempting to come across as inquisitive rather than desperate. Every new detail was a fresh pain, but I couldn't stop looking for Morgan and Elliot. Oh, Morgan and Elliot? Yeah, I think they're looking at houses in the suburbs. Baby coming and all? I messaged Lamar, a friend of Elliot's, on Facebook and asked if we could get coffee together. Just to catch up, I naively wrote. Even when Elliot and I were together, Lamar had always been a little flirtatious. I reasoned that he would be my greatest option for learning about Elliot's present situation and possibly gaining access again. I gave my best performance when we first met, strong but emotional, nostalgic about the past but forward-looking. I applied my makeup the way Elliot liked it and donned the outfit he had always adored. After some small conversation, I inquired, "So, what's really going on with Elliot and this Morgan girl?" Raising an eyebrow, Lamar said, "It seems so rushed." Lamar stroked my elbow as we were leaving, saying, "They're happy, Jade. Really happy." "And the baby?" "Elliot's over the moon." His gaze lingered on me in a way that made it obvious what he was saying. "You know you're still a beautiful woman, Jade. Any man would be lucky to have you." I remarked, "Perhaps we could do this again sometime," as I leaned slightly into his contact. Lamar's dinner evolved into cocktails, which evolved into more. I convinced myself that I was merely using him to gain intimacy with Elliot. The reality, however, was more straightforward and depressing. I was longing for a relationship, for someone to see me the way Elliot used to. We immediately built a relationship, if you can call it that. There was chemistry on a physical level, but my attention was still on Elliot. In the meantime, I started a campaign to regain Elliot that I now realize is really unsettling. I wrote him lengthy emails outlining my memories and regrets. Just to check out their new residence, I drove past it. "Please stop contacting me. What we had is over. I've moved on, and I'm asking you to respect that." I arrived at Elliot's office, making a fuss in the lobby. Elliot's comments became more and more stern. I kept saying, "I just need 5 minutes," as security was called. Elliot came out of the lift. Elevator's face was a mix of sympathy and rage. As interested coworkers looked on, he whispered, "What are you doing?" and drew me aside. I said, "I need to talk to you." "About us? About what I did? About everything?" His statement, "There is no us," was clear. "And this showing up at my work, this is exactly why I've been avoiding you. Isn't healthy, Jade." It was impossible for me to resist calling after him as he left. "What about our baby? Don't you ever think about our baby?" His eyes were burning with a frigid rage I had never seen before, and he froze before turning around. In his own words, every single day, every day I think about our child. The difference is I don't use that tragedy as a weapon. I knew Elliot and Morgan were eating dinner at a restaurant that evening, so I showed up there. I saw them right away. Morgan in a floral maternity dress, her tummy now noticeably round, and Elliot in a blue button-down. I reached their table before I could question myself. I said, "I just wanted to introduce myself to your new girlfriend," and I turned to smile phonily at Morgan. "I'm Jade." Elliot corrected abruptly, "Elliot's wife, ex-wife." I said, "Do you know he can't give you children?" before I could stop myself from lying. "There's a reason I miscarried. Genetic issues. You should get tested before it's too late." Elliot hurried to his feet. "That's enough. You need to leave now." Morgan put his hand on his arm. "Elliot, she's just hurt and lashing out." I yelled, "Don't psychoanalyze me. You don't know anything about me or what Elliot and I had. I know he deserves better than this." Morgan muttered, and I think you know that too. I was more enraged by her serene sympathy than I would have been by wrath. I grabbed Elliot's glass of water and hurled it at Morgan. There was silence in the restaurant. I was escorted out after security was summoned. I received restraining orders for Morgan and Elliot 3 days later. I sobbed and called Lamar, hoping for pity. I messed up, I freely acknowledged. I went too far. But I just love him so much, Lamar. I can't let go. Jade, Lamar said at last, I can't do this anymore. This thing between us, it was fun, but I'm not interested in being your therapist or your connection to Elliot. I was overcome with regret and self-pity for the next week. I had destroyed all possibility of a reunion with Elliot, burned every bridge, and alienated everyone who loved me. I was eventually brought back to reality by my boss's increasingly worried communications. Adding losing my job to all of this was not an option. Lamar texted me to ask to meet up 2 weeks after the restraining order was issued. The touch made my heart skip a beat. Someone was still interested in speaking with me. Lamar looked terrific, better than I remembered when we first met. Our evening together was strong and passionate, the kind of connection I had persuaded myself I had never experienced with Elliot. Lamar and I lived in a bubble of pleasure and superficial intimacy for 3 weeks. Then one morning, Lamar's phone rang with a text while he was taking a shower. The preview of the message. I picked up the phone, opened the message thread, and displayed a woman's name, Vanessa, along with the lines, "Miss you, baby. I can't wait for you to come home tonight." Vanessa was his girlfriend, so she wasn't just any girl. Plans for trips together, I love yous, and conversations about their future were all part of it. Having coffee with Elliot's crazy ex, she's still obsessed with him, kind of sad, actually. Later, after our first night together, he wrote to her, "Don't worry about Jade. It's just physical. You know you're the only one I love." I was sitting on the edge of the bed with his phone in my hand when Lamar came out of the shower. I said, "Vanessa seems nice," in a hollow voice. His face changed from one of surprise to one of resignation. Lamar groaned without even trying to refute it, saying, "Jade, it's not what you think." "Really? Because it looks exactly like what I think. You've had a girlfriend this whole time." I reached my lowest point that night alone in my apartment. "Look, what did you expect? You were using me to get to Elliot. I was using you for other things. We used each other." Gazing into the bathroom mirror, I could truly see who I had become. Someone who might have been at fault for a miscarriage and would place the blame on an innocent guy. Someone who would harass and stalk a lady who was expecting. Someone who would have sex with a man merely to learn more about her former partner. I made a call to a therapist the following day. I told her everything in our first session because I thought she would judge me. Out the mess I had created in my life. Therapy in the ensuing months was harsh but essential. I had to confront the things I had been avoiding. My inclination to rewrite history to make myself the victim. My tendency to ruin relationships when they were serious, and my incapacity to accept responsibility for my actions. The session where my pregnancy was the most difficult. It was both upsetting and somehow liberating to finally admit out loud that I drank and smoked marijuana while I was pregnant. Although my therapist didn't clear my name, she did help me realize that punishing myself indefinitely wouldn't. After 6 months of therapy, I got an envelope in the mail that didn't have a return address. An invitation to the wedding of Elliot and Morgan was enclosed. I kept looking at it, wondering whether it was an error of any sort. Then I noticed a handwritten note on a different card. "Jade, I debated sending for a long time. Elliot doesn't know I'm reaching out. I wanted you to hear from us directly rather than through the grapevine. We're getting married next month, and our daughter was born 3 weeks ago. Her name is Lily. I don't pretend to understand everything that happened between you and Elliot, but I do believe in closure. The restraining order expires next week, and we won't be renewing it. I hope you're finding peace. Morgan." Attached was a tiny picture of a newborn, the eyes of Elliot. I used to trace her small features. My face is wet with finger tears. Our daughter might have been this person. Our lives may have been like this, but they weren't, and never would be. I was not present at the wedding. Rather, I sent Morgan a little email wishing them well and thanking her for the closure. I included it was a modest acknowledgement of their new beginning, nothing spectacular. A year has passed since then. I would like to declare that I have fully recovered, absorbed my lessons, and improved as a person. The reality is more nuanced. I still feel a deal of regret sometimes. I still have dreams in which Elliot and I are together when I wake up. I still find myself asking. I sometimes get updates about Elliot, Morgan, and Lily from mutual friends. Like a wound gradually getting better, each update hurts a bit less than the one before it. The fact that certain mistakes cannot be corrected has been the most difficult reality for me to accept. What I threw away cannot be recovered by any amount of development or change. Without me, Elliot has moved on and created a lovely life. Even though I've matured, I still find myself pleading with God to return him to me in my darkest hours. I'm certain it won't occur. I am aware that it shouldn't occur. Elliot is deserving of his contentment with Lily and Morgan. However, I still have to overcome the selfish part of me that wishes I could go back in time. Remember when I told him the miscarriage was a sign in our living room? I wish I could take back those hurtful words, embrace him rather than drive him away, and mourn our loss together rather than turning it into a weapon. According to my therapist, remorse can be constructive if it results in change, but eventually I must forgive myself and move on. I'm making an effort. There are better days and days. In a way, I still think that soulmates exist, but I've come to realize that's not the case. The universe does not give flawless cosmic matches in a bow. Someone who loves you despite your imperfections is your soulmate. Someone who makes the decision to support you through difficult times. For me, Elliot was that individual.